Why some women only respect men after they struggle. A man can give everything to a woman: time, attention, loyalty, patience, and somehow she still acts unimpressed. But the moment he becomes harder to reach, the moment he stops chasing, the moment his life starts moving without her, suddenly she notices him. And a lot of men don't understand why, because nobody teaches men one painful truth. Some women do not value sacrifice. They value status, not just money, not just looks. Status. The feeling that other people want you, the feeling that your time matters, the feeling that losing you would actually hurt. That's why a broke man working overtime to please everybody often gets ignored, while the man building himself quietly gains attention without begging for it. A woman may reject the guy who spends his last $80 trying to impress her, then chase the guy who disappears for 2 weeks because he's focused on making $8,000. Not because women are evil, but because attention without standards looks weak, and weakness kills attraction. A lot of men think love comes first. In reality, respect usually comes first. Without respect, affection fades fast. That's why some men get used for free dinners, emotional support, rides, favors, and endless validation, while another man barely texts back and somehow gets treated like a prize, because one man is trying to earn approval, and the other man already approves of himself. That difference changes everything. Women pay attention to emotional stability more than men realize. A man who panics when she pulls away loses power. A man who stays calm, focused, and disciplined becomes harder to manipulate, and scarcity creates value. Look at the world. A man with no purpose will spend $300 trying to keep a woman interested. A man with purpose will invest that same $300 into his business, skills, health, or future. One becomes emotionally dependent. The other becomes dangerous to ignore. And over time, women notice that difference immediately, because confidence backed by results speaks louder than promises. This is why struggling men often get disrespected, not because struggle itself is unattractive, but because many struggling men abandon their standards out of fear of losing women. They tolerate disrespect, over-explain themselves, beg for loyalty, accept mixed signals, ignore red flags, and every time a man accepts less than he deserves, attraction weakens. A woman may feel sympathy for a man, but sympathy is not desire. That's the brutal reality many men learn too late. The men women usually admire are not the men trying hardest to please them. They are the men building lives that do not revolve around female approval. Men with goals, men with options, men with discipline, men who can walk away. Walking away is powerful because most men cannot do it. Most men stay where they are disrespected because loneliness scares them more than humiliation. And women can feel that fear. The man who fears losing her will usually lose control of himself first. But the man who values peace, purpose, and self-respect above attention becomes emotionally unpredictable, and unpredictability creates curiosity. Now listen carefully. This does not mean women only care about money. That's the lazy explanation. Money simply amplifies traits that already existed. A disciplined man with $50 becomes more disciplined with $50,000. An insecure man with $50 becomes even more insecure with $50,000. Women are often reacting to the mindset behind the money. A man earning $12,000 a month usually carries himself differently from a man desperate for approval. He speaks differently, moves differently, thinks differently. He's less emotional over small things because his life has direction, and direction is attractive. A woman wants to feel like the man she's with can survive pressure, not just financially, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. That's why many relationships collapse when a man loses purpose. Once his confidence disappears, the relationship often changes with it, because energy matters, and people respond to energy before words. You can tell a woman you're valuable all day long, but if your behavior screams insecurity, she will believe your behavior instead. That's why self-improvement matters more than performance. A man who genuinely respects himself stops doing desperate things. He stops over-texting, stops forcing conversations, stops buying affection, stops chasing people who clearly don't value him. And ironically, that's usually when people start valuing him more, because the world respects what is difficult to control, including women. The truth is, many men are taught to worship women before they build themselves, so they grow up emotionally dependent. They believe getting a girlfriend will solve loneliness, insecurity, lack of purpose, and low confidence. But relationships cannot save a man who refuses to save himself. That's why some men lose themselves completely after heartbreak, because the woman was never the center of the problem. The lack of identity was. A strong man can lose money and rebuild, lose relationships and recover, lose opportunities and adapt, because his confidence is built on competence, not validation, and women notice that resilience immediately. Attraction grows around emotional strength, not emotional chaos. That's why the man constantly seeking reassurance often struggles, while the man focused on growth naturally attracts attention without forcing it. And the older many women get, the more they value stability, discipline, and ambition over temporary excitement. Because eventually reality arrives. Bills arrive, pressure arrives, life arrives, and fantasy alone cannot survive real life. The man who can lead himself becomes rare, and rare things always become valuable. So if you're a man listening to this, stop making women the center of your identity. Build your health, build your finances, build your confidence, build your discipline, build your future. A woman should complement your life, not become your entire purpose. Because when a man becomes obsessed with approval, he loses himself. But when he becomes obsessed with growth, people start noticing him without him asking. And sometimes the same women who ignored him at $500 suddenly become interested when he's making $15,000 a month. Not because the money magically changed him, but because the man finally changed himself. If this video made you think differently, subscribe, leave a comment, and share this with someone who needs to hear it.